Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, we are finally live. I am Dixie Dave with my co-host.
And I'm Crossen, and this is the NWF's live weekly podcast. We're coming live on both Facebook and YouTube, and this is a big one tonight, Dave. This is, in fact, the biggest event we ever held at the NWF.
Loads of fun that night, lots of memories from my time with the NWF. And this is going to be our weekly look back at various happenings in the NWF. We're going to be doing this live once a week, starting in January. This is just an example tonight of what we have in store for you.
That's exactly right. Starting January 5th is when we're going to be live again. We're going to take a break for the holidays and everything. It's a busy time. But we'll be back in the first week of January, and that first week I'm not even sure what episode we're gonna pick, but we're gonna have the whole NWF library to pick from. So 1984, 1985, 1986, 87, there's lots of different shows we're gonna be able to grab from in that area, in that type of. And also, Dave, next year we're hoping to bring some guests in with us on these watch-alongs. Former wrestlers, alumni, whatever.
And who knows, Crossen and I have also talked about maybe bringing in a few of the fans.
Oh, yeah. And we're going to try to interact with anybody as well that comes on and joins us live. With these podcasts, a lot of people watch these after they're live, and you get most of your views that way. That's just the way it works. But anybody that is with us live, we're certainly going to try to take your questions or comments or anything like that as we go along here.
And we appreciate you coming in and watching with us. I mean, this event, Crusher, we had done 2 prior events to this.
Yes.
But this event was our biggest show that ever happened for us.
Yeah. And you personally were at our first event on May 9th at the Anoka Armory. That's how you got interested.
Exactly. I mean, our events, we didn't hold back. I mean, we were teenagers back then. And anybody that wanted to join in with us and have fun with us, we were willing to let them join in and have fun.
Yeah, that's really what it was. It was all about the fun. And like, I don't know if you mentioned it, Dave, but, what we're doing, we're looking back almost 40 years ago to when we were actually kids. So we're watching us as when we were young. It's not like we're watching a bunch of kids today and we're 2 old guys. This is actually us.
Right. I mean, as we alluded to in one of our teasers, on this show, we're not going to give any spoilers, but on this show was my 13th birthday, the day of this show.
And I didn't know that. It just, and I got to, this event was supposed to be on a Friday the 17th, and it got changed, and there's a story with that, why that happened, but it just fell on your birthday, and that's kind of... What a birthday present to be on the biggest event of the NWF ever held.
Well, you and I have talked off camera, and I always jokingly say it was the biggest event because Dixie Dave was there.
Yeah, we sold tons of tickets because Dave was on that show, that's for sure. Well, we'll have plenty of time to keep talking because the way we're going to do this, I'm going to start the sharing the file here of the Anoka Armory event, and it's just going to play nonstop. The audio's already been brought down to a lower level, so you'll be able to hear us, talk along with this, and you'll still hear the audio. It's just going to be lower so you can hear us, and we'll give you, we'll talk about different things happening with what we're seeing on screen, as well as other stories and insights as we go along here. So let's go ahead, Dave, and let's start up the. I just gotta.
You're ready? Let's roll it.
Yeah, let's roll it here. All right.
Now, as I remember, looking back at this footage, Jason was nervous going out because, being honest, you've had some affiliation with the American Wrestling Association back in the day.
Yeah, I did. So there's, I wrote about this in my book a little bit, but there's a lot more with it. So I was always in contact with the AWA, American Wrestling Association. Vern Gagne, I sent Vern Gagne tapes of our show back in '84, and so I was, and then what I did, I was 14 years old. I'm sending Vern tapes of our show, wanting him to see what we were doing, and I didn't hear anything, so I called the offices of the Minneapolis Boxing and Wrestling Club. They're in the phone book. And I'm nervous as heck. Here I am, 14 years old, calling the offices of the AWA, and I asked for Vern Gagne, and I was put on hold. They asked who I was and everything, and they put on hold. And I'm thinking, I'm just sweating bullets here while I'm waiting. I'm thinking Vern's going to come on. Then a guy comes on the phone. His name's Roy Nelson. I'm like, who's this? Well, he explains to me that he's Vern's talent agent, and he's just they got the tapes and they watched it. They're not quite sure what they want to do, but he said, anytime you want to call us, give me a call and we'll talk. The door's open. Just, I want to keep us informed of everything you're doing going forward. So I had an open door with the AWA that way in communication. I always let Roy Nelson know everything we're doing, including all these events. But when we advertised this event, we advertised it as All-Star Wrestling. And Jason, so we had a fan that got confused and thought it was going to be the AWA All-Star Wrestling. One fan that actually complained at our ticket booth. So I went out there and talked to the guy. I said, look, if you think this is the All-Star Wrestling and you were confused, we'd be happy to give you a refund. And he's like, oh, no, I'm fine. I'll stick around and watch it. I'm like, okay. So that was that. Jason got wind of this, and then he's like, he was nervous. He's like, I don't want to go out there. I'm afraid they're going to start throwing things at me. He was really nervous. They're going to be throwing stuff at him and everything else. And I said, Jason, calm down. I said, I was one fan. I said, and that's what I did. I told him how to open it. I said, say Junior Professional Wrestling, NWF. Welcome everybody to the event, and get that off your chest. And that's what happened.
Now here we are. We're opening up cards.
Yeah, Chad Dr. Destruction Rancourt, the late Chad Rancourt. He just passed away this year, actually in July. Sad situation there, but that's the guy in the white, Chad Dr. Destruction Rancourt. And he's wrestling Dr. Death, who was really just Steve in the mask. It looks like Mr. X because it is Mr. X, just a different name. He's calling himself Dr. Death here.
Right. Now, one thing I want to put out to our audience real quick is a lot of us kids, we were not formally trained in the art of professional wrestling, but you had done some work with and had been in contact with a very renowned trainer, and you would train us as we ran.
Yes. So, when we did our first event, the one you came to, May 9th, at the Armory, that was about 350 fans. Not as big as this crowd, but not a small crowd either.
Right.
That was our first event, and a guy by the name of Jim Mitchell showed up at that event. Now, if people don't know who Jim Mitchell is, in the AWA, he wrestled as the Iron Duke. He was an old wrestler. He had this, he had missing a few fingers, and he had this glove thing he wore. And anyways, I only knew him as the Iron Duke, and I was like, somebody saying, yeah, the Iron Duke's here, and so everybody went out and met him, and I thought, that's interesting. So I thought maybe the AWA sent him. I thought he still worked for the AWA, but apparently he didn't, and he just showed up because he was curious. Shortly after that event, Steve wanted to go meet Eddie Sharkey, and I said, who's Eddie Sharkey? I was so naive back then, Dave. I didn't know who Eddie Sharkey was. I mean, I knew what I was doing with the NWF, right? I was so involved with it that I kind of just didn't pay attention to the inner workings at, 14, 15 years old. Right. So anyways, Steve explained it to me, and I think Steve wanted to get in with Eddie because he knew that he could get into what Eddie was doing, which was the normal independent wrestling with the big guys. And I think Steve wanted to get in with them. So anyways, long story short, he wanted to go and meet up with Eddie Sharkey, and we did. And Eddie had, by this time, the news, news like event, when you hold 350 fans at an event at the Anoka Armory, that news gets out in the wrestling community in the area. Eddie had heard of our event. So when he heard that guys from the NWF were here, he immediately wanted to meet us. So we met with Eddie in the back room at some little bar card he was doing in Fridley. And Eddie was just, couldn't have been more welcoming to us. Open arms. And the first thing he said, Dave, was, you and I, we got to do an event together sometime. And that is what people thought of us back then. That's how it's so different today, Dave. Backyard wrestling has given such a black eye. But back in the 80s, when backyard wrestling didn't exist, there was nothing to compare us to.
Right. I mean, we were, for lack of better terms, we were innovators in this respect. I mean, you had gone out, gotten us a professional ring.
Yeah.
And as I remember, this ring was so much better than the first ring I ever wrestled in.
Oh, yeah. This ring was 20 feet by 20 feet. It was an actual wrestling ring. It had these rings back in these days had a center spring in the middle. That's the way they were built. They don't do it that way today. They use flexi steel, but back then they actually had a spring in the middle. And it was 20 by 20, and it was such an improvement. You know, we really could grow our wrestling at this point because we had a working ring that actually really worked.
I mean, I remember in my first match, I don't remember what we were calling the arena, but it was my first match was in a boxing ring, set right on the floor.
Yeah, in Fred Moore Junior High, we used Golden Gloves boxing ring, and it was no give there. That was on concrete with wrestling mat pads, basically. Yeah, that was tough. You know, Chad, I'm watching Chad. You know, Chad Rancor is the one in the white here. Dr. Destruction, Chad Rancor. He was very talented in the ring, and part of that was because he had a lot of amateur wrestling background. He was in amateur wrestling in school, so anytime you have that under your belt, it does help. So he was, you know, yeah.
You know.
Back to your comment, though, with Eddie. So, you know, after I met Eddie and got to meet him, I got to know him, and I spent a lot of time at his training camp. A lot of time there. I would just show up, and we'd bullshit for hours. And he would help me and fix, you know, I would show him some of how our technique and how we're doing it, and he would correct me and show me what I was doing wrong. Because we were doing things, I would say 80% correct, but then there was that other 20% of, you know, working off the right or working off your left, and it just different things. And Eddie would correct. I remember Eddie specifically corrected my flying head scissors move. He showed me how to do it properly. I give him credit for that. And I took all that knowledge to you guys. All right, Dr. Destruction Chad wins the match against Dr. Death. You know, this opening match, I'm looking at I have the official program guide. This handful of these only known to exist, and I have them. The first match was supposed to be a 6-man tag. Rough Ryan, Sergeant Smash, and Rock and Roll Reinholtz against Destroyers 1 and 2 and Tough Tony. Well, 2 of these guys didn't show up. Reinholtz and Tough Tony didn't show up. So we had to change that. We had to push that match up further in the card, and we put Dr. Death against Dr. Destruction, who wasn't even scheduled, by the way. He wasn't on the card.
But, you know, that's the love that all of us had for what we were doing. We were there, whether we were booked or not.
Yeah.
Just in case we were needed.
Yeah, because something like this would happen. You know, where we had to change the card. So these are all the new slow-mo. This is from the DVD. So the DVD, I doctored up and put all these slow-mo replays in at the end. This wasn't originally aired this way. But it's kind of adds a nice touch. And then we throw in some different promos and stuff to build up to the matches that are going to take place. You know, the next match is Sergeant Smash and Rough Ryan against the Destroyers 1 and 2, who was Terry Kostnapel and Troy Sufka. So this is just an interview with Smash, just to kind of give a little, anything I had I could show for a match, I would show up for in the actual match.
Right.
Terry Kostnapel is an interesting situation. You know, he's one of the Destroyers here.
Yep.
So the way I trained him, we didn't have a place to set our ring up at the time. So I literally trained him in the courtyard of the apartments by Target in Coon Rapids, in the open courtyard on the grass. That's where he got trained.
Well, where Target used to be.
Yeah, where Target used to be, I should say, in Coon Rapids, yeah. So Troy Sufka, he's Todd Sufka's brother, so one of the Blade Runner's brother. That's who's in the ring there with Terry. That's Terry Kosnopple there. Very talented though. He was a kind of a natural at if you watch him in this match, watch him in particular. He takes pretty good bumps. He's this was his first match. Was his tag team match. So.
Well, that's one thing you were good at is I guess put it in today's terminology, you were a great Paul Heyman. You were able to hide people's weaknesses.
Well, yeah, and it wasn't about being good. And I talk about he's good, and I'm talking about stuff like that, and Chad was good. But it's not, the NWF wasn't about, the purpose of the league wasn't about how good you were. The purpose was, if you wanted to be in professional wrestling and you were in that age group, it was an open door for you to come in. Jason said it best. The show was truly public access as a show because anybody who wanted to be a part of it could. That was, fit the qualifications of basically being the right age.
Right. I mean, case in point, I knew a couple guys that were involved, and they brought me to the first Armory card that we had. Very next day, I was at Fred Moore.
Yeah, that's because that first Armory show we did on May 9th, it was horrible scheduling on my part. There you go. That's what you get for being 16 years old promoting this stuff. But I had a TV taping set the very next day from the big event at the Armory. So we did May 9th at the Armory, and then May 10th we had to go to Fred Moore for a TV taping in the morning because those tapings were done in the morning.
Yep.
So you talk about being sore and having to go and do it again. Yeah, I remember that.
But that's the thing about wrestling. You wrestle when you're sore. I'm gonna say this right now. To me, I hate when people refer to wrestling as fake.
Right. Hey Dave, but quickly, this is a shout out to CJ Hawk 85. How are you guys tonight? We're doing great, CJ.
I'm doing great.
This is the first show we're doing. We're looking back at our biggest Armory card that we ever had in October, but we're looking forward to January, honestly, when we can kick this thing off every week, and we're going to pick actually weekly TV tapings that we did, a lot of those, and that'll be fun when we get going with that.
And to our fans, and I haven't priorly discussed this with Crossen, but we do have a chat forum on Facebook, and if you have watched our shows prior, if you have a favorite show, let us know.
Yep. Yeah, just send us a message either on Facebook or YouTube. Speaking of which, if you're watching us on Facebook or YouTube, I'm just going to point out that our YouTube channel is very easy to find. You just go to youtube.com/NWF Wrestling. That's our YouTube channel. And if you want to know where our Facebook channel is, again, very easy to find. Facebook.com/groups/NWF Wrestling. So it's NWF Wrestling is the thing to remember. And we invite everybody to join our Facebook group. Our Facebook group is full of former wrestlers that were on the show, but it's also got a lot of fans in there too. Everybody's invited to our Facebook group.
We want to be interactive with our fans. And, if you guys have questions about how in the heck did us kids do this? Or, as you and I have discussed off camera, you've had people that have asked you, where were our parents?
Yeah, people, especially with events like this. The biggest thing, Dave, that people don't. In fact, there's people that flat out don't believe that at 16 years old I promoted this thing, or ran this league and got the Armory booked, and they just don't. Well, today they probably couldn't do it at that age, but back then they just don't understand. They just don't believe, a lot of people, that kids could actually book an event like this at the Armory with not having their parents involved at some point. And well, you were there, Dave. Their parents weren't running the show. It was me. But
Exactly.
But here's the thing. Back then, they just didn't ask those questions. When I went to book the Armory, he didn't ask if I was 18 years old. And there was a contract I had to sign, which I did, and we had to put money down. And the biggest thing with the Armory is they wanted their half of their deposit down. That was what got you booked. They didn't ask for insurance. People say, "How'd you do it without insurance?" Well, they didn't ask for it. Not every place was like that. I wanted to do Fred Moore Junior High. I wanted to do the outdoor, what is it, John Rich Field or whatever, the football field. I wanted to do an outdoor event there, but the school would require insurance, and I just couldn't come up with the money for the insurance to do that kind of thing. The Armory, they didn't ask for insurance. They just didn't.
And as far as people asking, where were our parents? To be honest, okay, my parents were divorced, and my mother's sitting somewhere in the crowd watching the show. Not a wrestling fan, but she's in the crowd watching the show.
The only time the parents, I will say this, the only time the parents were involved at these, and the only time they were involved were at these Armory shows, only at my direction. So in other words, I needed some people just to run the ticket table, for the people coming in through the door.
Yep.
So I would have a couple parents would ask them to volunteer to run the ticket counter just to collect the money and everything, because we needed people to do that kind of thing. We also had some parents help escort the wrestlers to the ring just as a security type thing, just to have somebody with them. You never know.
Right.
And that was the only time, Dave, that there were parents. Now, Steve was I guess you could say Steve Engstrom was an adult. He was 26 years old, but man, he acted like younger than most of us that were 16 years old. So he really, there's that. Yeah, Terry.
Older than us, but mentally, that's question.
Another thing, here's the deal. You notice how dark this is? It's dark lit. It wasn't in reality. It was actually lit perfectly. If you were there in person, this thing was lit like the St. Paul Civic Center. The ring was the only thing illuminated. But in 1986, the camera quality and the production quality we had required much more light. So you end up getting kind of dark looking images, unfortunately. Nothing I can do about that. I have tried back in post-production years later to correct this. It's really tough to correct video that's, too dark. It's just almost impossible. But Terry was so good selling his move. Terry was really good in the ring as the guy that just hit Smash in the stomach there. I mean, he really was. Terry could take the bumps and deliver pretty good for being a young guy that he was. And just his very first match was this card. I mean, that's crazy to think. Dave, this was the first event. Well, I shouldn't say that. July was the first with Rick Pitts, but where we used adult referees. May 9th and all our TV tapings, the refs were just the rest of us kids. Smash covered his mouth. You know how he did that? That was not supposed to be the finish. He knew I want to say it, he knew he screwed up. The Destroyers were supposed to win this match. Yeah, so Smash gets up and he covers his mouth. Yeah, he knew really, Smash sold that pretty good, that clothesline. Yeah, Who are you? So what do we got here? I think our next match is Mr. X against Mr. Destroyer. So Mr. X on the right, that's, of course, Steve Engstrom. What do you want to know? I'll tell you something about Steve. he was the best at taking bumps in our league. Got to give him credit for that.
But beyond that, less said about him, the better.
Yeah, he.
And we're gonna start ripping up people. And the first people that's gonna stop is who?
And that's Chad Rancor as Mr. X2. We were just seen him earlier. He actually was Mr. X2. Mr. X2 actually had two different people playing him, Jason Adamson and originally, and then Chad took over for Jason.
And where's that piece of tape? We told you to shut up.
A lot of kids came and went.
You watch out, because I'm coming for you.
And that's why,
and if,
hooded wrestlers are good to have.
Yeah. Dominic Dumas here, Mr. Destroyer. He now lives in Thailand, halfway around the world. Still in touch with him. He's this interview he's doing here is in referring to Mr. Macho, but we just used it on the DVD for the Mr. X match.
Certain appointments which I haven't been able to make, so he's probably
that's one match you said that you wish that you could have done, but never got around.
Was the Mr. X or Mr. Macho versus Mr. Destroyer?
Yep.
Yeah, that was what we were aiming for.
What people didn't realize is back in the NWF, we would use the storytelling to build up to the event.
Yeah, we did. A lot of interviews, a lot of character development. Back in the 80s, it was all about the feuds, or we call them the rivalries or the feuds, but in today's terminology, the storyline. Right? It was all about building up the chemistry. And of course, in those days, good versus evil, very popular in the mid-80s,
Exactly.
Well, here comes Mr. X. This is Steve again in the mask. Now he's Mr. X. And then, Dominic Dumas. Mr. Destroyer had so much potential in our league. He ended up having to move out of the Twin Cities over into Wisconsin and could not make the show anymore. But that's why the Mr. Macho, Mr. Destroyer match never happened.
Exactly.
And Dom was really up and coming. He was, him and Macho started out as a tag team, the Mr. Nice Guys, and then they kind of went their separate ways. And and so Dom, he was very, very talented in the ring. And when you're working with Steve, I mean, you're going to have a good match because he just bumps so well. And so this match is going to be a good match, with these two. I just wish we had better lighting at these shows,
That's one thing about both of these characters here, or both the people in this match. Off camera, you and I, we discussed our personal feelings about Mr. Ingram. But both Mr. Destroyer and Ingram pulled double duty. Actually, didn't Steve pull triple duty that night?
Yeah, Steve wrestled 3 times. He did the Mr. X, Dr. Death, and then he does Pretty Boy Taylor in the main event.
Yeah. And Dominic pulled double duty that night.
Yeah, Dom was doing the Rattlesnake Jake character. Rattlesnake Jake originally was Jason Crossen. And nobody, Jason will be the first to tell you, nobody did Jake like he could, and that's the truth. Jason had a style with Rattlesnake Jake that was so fun to watch, and you've seen it. We'll see that when we watch the Fred Moore tapings, because that's when he did all that. That's when you see Rattlesnake Jake a lot. But tell his mom ended up saying, "Hey, you're not doing this no more." She was afraid he's going to get hurt. So Mr. Destroyer wins the match, and pretty quick match actually.
Yeah.
A few minutes.
Fast match. Now you've got those nunchucks or whatever. Mr. Destroyer. Yeah.
But yeah,
Boy, the memories here. You and I have discussed off camera the reason, but it's been a very long time since I've seen this show.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I haven't watched this in a long time.
You know, and one thing we want to let fans know is, you know, there may be times in the not
No, the
future where the
people on our
NWF,
skin right now are the lightweight tag team
we might not
champions of the
wrestle,
world,
but
the Super Ds.
may have a reunion.
The Super Ds
in the
winning the
future.
title on July 26th
Yeah.
in the Anoka Armory. Now they've been defending all over the state.
Yeah, you know, it's
About to make their appearance, their first appearance in the NWF.
you know, it's
The Blade Runners. And
we
they've
got
their
some
backs
plans. I
set
mean,
on you.
I want to know
we're coming up on our 40 years since inception from the league. In 2024 will be our 40th kind of anniversary of our creation of our league.
Super Ds.
This is where the NWF struggled with. I hate to say it, Todd and Troy, and they're probably watching, but they weren't the best at interviews. And a lot of us weren't. But I wish we would have done. And Chris will tell you this too, Chris Barger, the interviewer. Wish we would have spent more time on these interviews. Yeah, developing these a little bit better.
Tag team champions of the world, the Super Ds. And
Well, as I remember, our interview shows were always early in the morning.
Yeah, at Group W Cable, we go down there and tape the interviews. And
you may want to stick around and watch this.
and a lot of times when we do our interview tapings at the studio, we do a whole month's worth of shows of interviews. You know, in one Group W session. Now here's the Blade Runners. That's Todd Sufka and his partner there. This was the match we wanted to get. You know, the Rough Russians were no longer, so we're trying to get the Super Ds a team to go against. So that's why we got these two going.
I know. I just heard.
And they were pretty. Todd was pretty good in the ring. The one on the right.
They better be. We're gonna come on.
So they were going to go against the Super Ds. Now they were scheduled to wrestle the Super Ds on the October 18th card. This is the next match coming up here. It's supposed to be the Super Ds against the Blade Runners. This is some highlights of them when we did our TV taping, building up to this card. We did a match with the Blade Runners and the Super Ds. And these matches were really good, man, for what it was. I mean, they actually had some legitimate heat in the ring with these two. Some of the points they were going at it in some of these spots. And Todd and Troy, tough as nails, could hold their own with anyone for that.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah, this is. But we had some pretty good aim. The referee carrying the other one. The double drop kick, and they miss it. Yeah, see that wasn't planned, and when you do that to the Super Ds, you're going to tick them off. So then you start getting some heat going on in these matches. And they start. I was thinking we're going to have to break up this match at the way this is going in some of these cases, but these two. Then we tried to build up a duel, like, you know, he got his feet on the ropes and he gets the 3 count on the Super Ds. It's a little controversy to add to this match coming up. But this match didn't happen when we get to the event, because what happened was, in reality, we said the Super Ds were injured and they couldn't wrestle, and we had to have a replacement team come in. And that's what Jason's saying right now, that the Super Ds are injured. That was just an angle. They're there, they come out, and then they get stripped of the titles, because I wanted to build this up for the next event. I figured we'll strip the Super Ds, it'll piss everybody off, and then when they can wrestle again on the next card, we'll have the rematch. But the reason that Todd and Troy could not wrestle is because they had, if I remember right, and I remember this is 40 years ago, they were big into soccer, and they had a soccer camp they had to go to, and their mom was like, you guys aren't doing this show because I don't want to risk you getting hurt with all the money we just put for the soccer camp. So because of that soccer camp that was happening a week later, there was no way she was going to let them do anything with this event because she didn't want to risk them getting hurt. So that's why they didn't wrestle.
And as we talked about before, I don't remember which one you said, but didn't one of the Super Ds go on to become a professional soccer player?
Both of them came on. So Todd and Troy, these two right here, Todd and Troy Dozowski, the Super Ds, they both went on to become professional soccer players. the Milwaukee Wave. I know they played for one of them. They might have both played for them. Then one of them went to Cleveland and played there, I believe. I forget the teams they all played on, but yeah, they're big time soccer and very good at it. And so they were into soccer before the wrestling. They were soccer was like a lifelong thing with them. So here they're getting stripped. We're giving the titles to the Blade Runners. People are booing. And that was just a setup. Now, we got a replacement team here in the masks. And this is basically Terry Kosnapple and Terry Block, Invader 1 and Terry Kosnapple. In masks, they wrestled double duty because we needed somebody to go against the Blade Runners. And they just... Okay, so these guys all know each other. The Blade Runners, Terry and Kosnapple and Terry Block, all in the same neighborhood there in Coon Rapids. They all know each other, and the two Terrys just work these guys big time. I think they get suplexed, I'm not kidding, 12 times.
Well, truth be told, a lot of us lived in the same neighborhood.
Yeah, you were in that area too.
I mean, I lived right down the hall from Todd and Troy Supka.
Yeah.
Terry Block just lived a couple blocks away from me.
Terry was underrated big time. We kind of consider there was a suplex. That's a high suplex for that little guy. He was very good in the ring. Terry was very polished with his moves. And you know what's the thing with Terry Block? He never argued the finish. If he had to get pinned, so be it. He never argued anything. He just did whatever he was told. It was so good, and that's why everybody respected him and had a lot of respect for him, including these guys, even though they just get worked in this match. Let's see.
Ooh, and a kick. Oh, Irish whipping. Oh, what a flying clothesline.
You know, I mean, a lot of these.
There's an interesting comment here, Dave. CJ mentions this. I'm going to refer to him as CJ. I've seen a bunch of people on YouTube create old school WWF, NWA, AWA, WCCW, and use it for universe mode. I think it's time to give NWF some love and do an NWF universe mode in WWE 2K22. I think he's referring to the game.
Right.
I actually did. I went and made a bunch of characters for one of the older WWE games. And it was a lot of work, and I tried to make them as close as I could. But yeah, that'd be fun. You know, it's always fun when you, and now it's so much better now than what it was when I did it. You can make them so accurate looking, you know.
Right. You know, I mean, I went on to have other gimmicks after the NWF, and I've created those gimmicks, but
yeah,
I've never really recreated a Dixie Dave in a WWF game.
So Dixie Dave, let's just talk a little bit about what happened here. So you showed up at the May 9th Armory card.
Right.
And you were interested, you wanted to get involved. I think you talked to me at the end of the show. I mean, this is what you told me, I believe. I don't remember, but I'm sure you did.
Well, I talked to the promoter, Sean Crossen.
Yeah. Yeah, and you said you wanted to get involved, and I think I told you we're show up at Fred Moore tomorrow morning.
Yep, you said we'll be at Fred Moore tomorrow morning. Show up there, and we'll see.
Yep. And right off the bat, I don't know who gave you the name Dixie Dave. I don't know who came up with that.
You know, it's 40 years ago.
If I had to guess, I'd say Jason or Matt.
Yep.
Matt Kelsey and Jason Klassen were good for that, coming up with characters. And then, I don't know where you found the straw hat, because you had a straw hat in the beginning.
You know, probably from one of my vacations to Florida.
Yeah, and it was kind of our Hillbilly Jim ripoff, I guess you could say, a little bit.
Well, if I remember correctly, I was billed as one of Hillbilly Jim's cousins
Got him in the air. Oh,
Yeah.
in the beginning.
He could have pinned him right there. Look at these guys must have been.
You know, I mean,
certainly
aside
do
from
have
the,
confidence, though. Oh,
you know, what we're doing in the ring,
Pin him.
people should take note that, you know,
The guy don't know nothing about wrestling.
you may be young,
He would have
but
had
follow
it
your
pinned,
dream.
and they would
You never know what'll happen. I mean,
probably even be back in the dressing room.
you know, look it up. We all of us kids, you know, let's see, we had kids as young as what, 10 years old in the league? And we had some, you know, we had one or two that were pushing adulthood.
Dave, we got a lot of comments coming off of Facebook. However, I can't identify them because, unfortunately, if I'm not friends with these Facebook users, they show up as Facebook user.
Right.
But I do see the comments coming in there. They're just saying hello to us and everything. So we do have our Facebook viewers watching as well.
Hello to everybody following on Facebook. I believe that there's a link that should appear above the video before you came in. If you click on that, it might show your Facebook identity.
Yeah, I don't know how. I guess I've never done. I usually always watch you. I watch YouTube streams all the time. I don't watch a whole lot of Facebook ones. I'm not sure
Right.
how they go. Let's talk a little bit about this night, though. Now, so here's what happened. We did the May 9th card, huge success. And then we did July 26th. And my naive way of thinking, I thought, we had 350 fans show up. They're going to come back. We don't have to bother with posters. We don't have to bother with advanced ticket sales. And to make matters worse, the cable company and Scott Tronson yanked us off of cable, said, you guys are advertising. You can't do that. Said we were advertising the event, and you can't advertise. So we lost that. Now, we eventually got our cable back because I went to the cable commissioner and overruled Scott, and that really pissed him off. But we got back on the air, but it was too late. So the word didn't get out, from the show. So we had a whopping 50 people show up in July for our Armory event, where we had 350 the time before. And I'm thinking, what the heck went wrong here? I didn't realize it right away. But I eventually figured it out. And that's why for this event here, the October 18th card, I figured this is redemption time. We're going back to the Armory and we are going to sell this thing out. I made that goal from the get-go. And I gave it 2 months to promote it. We did a lot of things back then for this event that were cutting edge that people never thought of really. One of the things we did for this event was, Cool 108, the Twin Cities, popular radio station, big time, right? Well, back then, they weren't as big as they are now, but they were based in Anoka, Minnesota. They were right on First Avenue. And they had a morning show in those days. And I got to thinking, what if we give them some tickets to let them give it away on their morning show?
Yep.
Because then they're going to plug our event. And we don't have to pay for it. It's a no-brainer. So I gave them 20 tickets, and they were thrilled. And I remember when we dropped off the tickets, I was with Steve and Larry. So it was me, Steve, and Larry, and I said, hey, I've got to drop these tickets off. And we came in there in the studio, and they're like, oh, you guys are from the show. You want to come on the air? I'm like, yeah, we want to come on the air. So we did a live radio promo right there. It was cool. But, we gave them tickets to give away for the event. We started put posters all over town. And I knew this was going to be a big event, Dave, because the Northern Bank, who was selling our advanced tickets, once we gave them tickets and had posters up, I think within a week or two, they called and said, hey, do you guys got more tickets? Because we sold through the batch you gave us. And I gave them 100 tickets. I'm like, what? You sold out? I said, yeah, I can get you more tickets. I'm thinking, wow. So I gave them another 50 tickets, figuring that'll hold them off, And then I think in a week after that, they went through those. So they were 150 advanced ticket sales. I'm like, so we knew right then and there, this is going to be big. I think in the end, they sold something like 200 advanced tickets for this show. Then we had another 250 or so come through the door.
30 seconds are remaining in the match.
And I also remember some of us wrestlers would go sell to friends and family.
Yeah, a lot of the wrestlers would get their friends and family involved, and I'd have the wrestlers selling tickets. We did that a lot for the May 9th card. We did it for this one too.
Yep.
But yeah, this was and I remember Larry, so Luscious Larry, right? Main event against Pretty Boy Taylor. So Larry wanted to do a promo, he wanted to have a match against maybe Mr. X to build up. I said, no, you're not going to wrestle at all until this event. He's like, what do you mean? I said, Larry, you're the attraction. Remember the Battle Royals and they bring in Andre and all you'd see is that poster of Andre? That's what you're going to be for this event. We're not going to show a bit of footage of you other than that interview of you posing. That's all we're going to show. And that was kind of like and if you want to see Luscious Larry, you got to come down to the, and we build him as this outsider coming in as a professional wrestler to come on and take on our own Pretty Boy Taylor, who was the adult that didn't belong and was a heel. And we're thinking this would be a perfect way to have him get his butt kicked, right? Against this big guy, Luscious Larry. That's how we build that match.
Or one half of the invaders at any rate. Invader number 1.
So it looks like we're coming on to your match, Dave.
Looks like it.
I see Invader 1. So there's Terry Block. What a train wreck of an interview, though, man. Look at how nervous. He was so nervous on the stick. And he just didn't feel comfortable looking at the camera. In the ring, he was gold, but man, interviews was not his thing.
You know, some people may hate me for doing this, but, you know, comparable to the late Chris Benoit. Great in the ring, horrible on the stick.
Yeah. CJ's got a question here, and we can answer this one. He says he understands why Scott Tronson hated wrestling and trying to kick you guys off of TV back then. Have you ever heard from Tronson ever since? Actually, we have never heard from Tronson. We tried to get him for the documentary when we did the Untold Story. He didn't want to take part in that. And we just haven't really heard from him at all. Nope. But, you know, I can tell you, all my times in dealing with them, you know when somebody doesn't like what you're doing. And I just knew Tronson didn't like what we were up to. So Dixie Dave in the ring against Invader 1 right now. And I believe, is this the match, Dave, where Terry's ribs got hurt?
I believe so. It was a botch in the match that caused his ribs to get hurt. You know,
Chad in the ring now. Chad Randall. He was Terry Block's best friend back then.
Yep.
Powerful guy though. I mean, big, powerful. And that's, of course, Dominic Dumas, Rattlesnake Jake in the mask outside the ring. See that Rapid Sports Center banner in the back? That was one of our sponsors. We got them to sponsor us for this event. They had to hang up their banner in the Armory. We got a lot of sponsors. I'm looking at the program guide here. For this event, we had First National Bank of Anoka, the Northern Bank, Blaine State Bank, Art Global Ford, and Rapid Sports Center had sponsored us, meaning they gave us money just to have their name mentioned in our program guide.
And sadly, majority of those businesses are no longer in Coon Rapids.
Yeah. Well, it was 40 years ago, you know.
Yep. I mean, every time I drive through Anoka, I drive past the Armory, I just sit there and smile.
Yeah. Gosh, Terry, I'm just, Terry, we kind of build Terry as a lightweight wrestler, but he really was on the edge of being in the heavyweight division. I wish we would have worked a match with Crusher Crossen against Invader 1. That would have been a good match, but face versus face matches weren't the most popular thing to do in '86.
Exactly. It was all about face versus heel.
I did wrestle Terry, though, as his Block character, you know, that tag team we just had in there against the Blade Runners.
That's the leg.
Yeah, in Dayton, Minnesota, I had a singles match with him. So we did work. We just didn't work
He's trying to
as
push
Invader
the
1
leg.
character.
He grabs
Yeah.
the ropes to get the break.
You know, I miss that
He's
Dayton
crawling under the rough.
arena.
And he
Yeah, the
takes
Dayton
him
pole barn. It was a nice place to do TV tapings, that's for sure.
out.
It was lit well. It was a nice setup.
Takes after Rattlesnake.
So there goes Dave tagging into Rattlesnake Jake.
Big discount price.
Yep, that's Chad being the powerhouse in the match.
Yeah, he was strong. Very strong guy.
The invaders,
Willing to take a bump.
So the when this event was done, it was such a success. Remember we rented out the basement of Dell's Pizza on First Avenue there, and we did a private screening of this whole show, and all the guys showed up. It was a fun time. Double suplex.
You know, the thing I find kind of funny is the one person that was supposed to be on this show that wasn't now owns a pizza place.
Yeah, I guess we can talk about that. So this match was this match was supposed to be the Invaders against Dr. Destruction and the Ice Dragon. And because that was what we were building up to. The Ice Dragon, Chris Downs, and Dr. Destruction we've seen earlier, they got suspended. And Chris was still suspended for this show. We actually did suspensions for real for disciplinary reasons. And because back in those days, you know, Chris Downs, the Ice Dragon, he was so hard. His attitude on the show, his heel attitude was for real. That's how he was back then. So he was hard to deal with, and he would get himself in all sorts of trouble with the guys, either off camera or whatever, and we had to suspend him. And I don't even remember what the exact reason was on this one, why he was suspended. But he was suspended. Chad's suspension wasn't as long. That's why he came back earlier. So then we needed a team to come in to replace this. So Dixie Dave, Rattlesnake Jake.
Yep, I remember that meeting. We were discussing the card and what we were going to do with things.
Yeah.
You got up the suspension. And I just threw it out there. If you want, I'll step in. Now, as I remember, we were billing that Chad had a knee injury in this match.
He actually did have a bad knee, and that was why he stopped wrestling. But we were billing it as I don't know if it was for real or not, though. But I know that we were kind of billing it that way. But I know he for real had a bad knee, though, too. It wasn't a joke.
Just in case you keep wondering why Rattlesnake Jake keeps going after the knee.
Yeah. It was a DDT, maybe? I wonder if we've seen him, if we missed it when that move got botched and Terry hurt his ribs. So I remember I seen Terry one day, he's all bandaged up with like ace bandage around his ribs. I'm like, what's going on? And he's like, yeah, I got hurt in that match. Yeah.
Is the third man in the ring for the Dixie.
Terry's patented drop kick, he was good at it.
He hasn't even interfered. Look at this. All he's doing.
There he is trying to get the crowd behind him.
Yeah. See Chad Rancourt in the corner of you guys.
Yep.
Action.
Dixie Dave banging on the back of Invader 1.
The commentators here were CJ Pregler and Troy, the Butcher Bulldog Otto. Troy Otto.
Yep.
Butcher Bulldog. Bulldog always played the heel commentator, and then CJ. The only time CJ ever showed up were for these big events, because he was my stepbrother, and he lived in Ridgefield, and couldn't make the tapings every week, but he would come for the big shows.
since May 9th.
He just wanted to be involved in some way, shape, or form, and he really couldn't be a wrestler. He's too small and everything. And but he loved commentating, or wanting to try to do that, and so that's why we had him do that gig. Worked out good.
I just found that out now.
Yeah.
History could be made here. Is he trying to injure his old leg again? Gets counted 2 balls.
I almost thought that was going to be the finish there.
Jake is just going wild.
It's been so long since I've seen this. So he's doing a figure 4. He doesn't submit, does he?
Figure 4 on.
He might.
Oh, here we go.
Here it is, right here. Dave doing that power slam.
Submission. We have new
Yeah, he did submit.
team champions.
One of the rare times of a submission being involved in the finish, huh?
Well, have to sell that knee injury.
What is Jake doing? He's already practically broke his leg.
Of course, the fans, they knew who to cheer for and who not.
Well, then why were they booing me?
No, don't go in there.
Yeah.
Hurt again.
Now,
Yeah.
now I'm going to plug something. Not, in a sense, not related to this Armory show, but to the many fans of the NWF. If you want a little piece of NWF history, either A, we do have these nice shirts. B, there is availability of DVDs
Count of 2.
and a book.
Count of 3. We have a new
Yeah.
national.
And
Is it
just
official?
recently,
Is it official?
just
Is it
recently,
official? Yes, it is.
we are now
Stevenson
selling
and,
replicas
we're working with Pretty Boy Taylor on the new.
of the NWF World Heavyweight title.
I don't like that we stand.
Yeah.
I don't wanna stand for any of
That's
that.
I'll show that here in a little bit, Dave. Let people see what that looks like. But that famous blue belt,
We're working a-
we've got that thing replicated right now, and it looks pretty darn good. It's a new replication of it, not the one you've seen before.
Oh my, they're working on Kid USA.
Not the one that's in the
What are they gonna do?
any of the previous pictures, but
Right, like on the Facebook page and stuff.
They split them apart. And now here comes Crusher Crossen, the world's champion, to try and help things out.
So yeah, we're building up. Looks like we're going on to the Kid Kelsey and Slick Steenerson match.
And a big drop kick.
Troy Steenerson,
On that arm, Butchers were
such a talent. Slick Steenerson, he was so good. You could here's another one. You could put him in with anybody, and he'd make the match.
Kid USA Kelsey for the national championship.
He was good. Wasn't so good at interviews, but he was good in the ring.
Coming back after having a broken arm, and he demanded this match for what you saw earlier.
So we're gonna interview
After
Slick
Kelsey
Steenerson
won,
here, I think.
Steenerson came in, offered his hand, and congratulations. Kelsey took it. And then
Chris Barger, very good in the mic for our announcer, doing these
I
interviews.
couldn't believe it. None of the fans at ringside
Exactly.
could
So
believe it.
professional.
And he demanded to get at you for the national championship.
Kelsey Schmelzy, that wimp don't know how to wrestle.
Steenerson hated doing interviews. He just hated it.
I mean, how did Pretty Boy Taylor lose the belt?
Now let's talk about people.
Kelsey was a natural at interviews.
Peterson and Campa.
Very good.
I was in Florida once.
And then Steenerson attacks Kelsey in the interview segment. There's that famous blue belt that we were talking about. Kelsey had it on his shoulder. That's the belt we have replicated now, and it's so nice. So now we go on to the match. This is a street clothes match, no disqualification, no time limit, I think. There's all sorts of stipulations we had on this, but
basically in today's terms, it would be a no time limit hardcore match.
yep, they could use any kind of. objects. Steenerson does the whole famous throwing the salt in the eyes in this match. It's great. Steenerson, this is a perfect kind of match for Steenerson. He'd love this kind of stuff. And although you don't see it on video, Steenerson actually, he doesn't juice. None of us were juicing back then, but he does bleed for this one, Steenerson does. Funny thing about this, so Troy, Luscious Leary comes out to this fog machine later on. We'll see it.
Yep.
Really cool. Troy heard about this and he's like, hey, Troy noticed the fire extinguisher in the dressing room. He's like, Sean, why don't you just blow that behind me when I go out and make me look like I have fog? Because we thought it was one of those CO2 extinguishers, right? That it would just dissipate. You can make smoke looking. Like, yeah, that sounds good. We should have read the label. It was one of those powder-filled extinguishers. So I do it. It picks a cloud of smoke that filled the whole armory up. It was horrible. So you'll see this haze floating into the armory when they do the wide shot, and that was Steenerson's grand entrance. Yeah, it did not go as we planned. Watch Troy take these bumps when he gets hit. Watch how he falls. Boom. We nicknamed that the timber fall. He would just fall like a tree. Gosh, he was good. So good at taking those. You remember, 16, 15, 14 years old and taking bumps like that, It's pretty good. The wrestling really got good in these days. When we got that real ring and we were able to really develop our wrestling, the maneuvers got really good. But again, this is old school stuff. We're not talking about, people will come in here and they'll say, oh my gosh, you missed that spot. You missed this. You screwed up that. That's sloppy. That's how you look at it today. Back in those days, in the 80s, it wasn't looked at with a fine-tooth comb. Even in the big leagues. You had your traditional moves, right, Dave? Your body slams, your suplexes, your elbow drops.
There was no 450 Hurricane Rana.
Nah, they didn't have that kind of stuff. So sometimes you get some of these newer fans that weren't even living in that era that come in and try to judge us for what they're used to. And it's not a fair comparison, really. It really isn't.
Comparing an apple to a baked potato.
Yeah. Yeah, there's two different styles of wrestling, really. There's Mr. Macho in the corner. And just look at, we had 450 fans come and see us. Now, people will say, well, they might have thought it was the AWA. If they thought it was AWA, they would have left.
Exactly.
They're still there. No, they knew what they were getting. We had a legitimate fan base, and the reason is because our cable show reached so many markets in the metro area. We were on in just about every cable market in the Twin Cities. And our show was getting, pumped on all of these shows every week for years. So we had a legitimate fan base. And that's when people ask me, well, how did you draw that kind of crowd? Well, the reason we drew that kind of crowd is because we had fans over the years that kept tuning in, really.
Tuning into our TV show. And as I remember, the majority of the NWF guys were highly accessible to the fan.
Yeah. Troy was so good, though. I mean, he was a talent, and he went on. Troy Steenerson, the guy that Kelsey just flashed, went on to work for Eddie Sharkey as well with me in the '90s. And Troy Steenerson, Slick Steenerson, actually wrestled the X-Pac, the Lightning Kid.
1, 2, 3 Kid, Lightning Kid.
Yeah, he went by the Lightning Kid in those days.
Yep.
Interesting story with that. So Sean Waltman was just starting out, and he came through Eddie's territory when me and Troy were working with him. And I think his grandma lived in Duluth, so he was staying up there. But he always was calling, because me and Troy had the NWF ring set up in Troy's pole barn. Right. And Waltman would be calling Troy constantly, wanting to come down and work out in the ring. And that always bothered Troy. You got to remember, we didn't know he was going to be a big star. He's just some young kid that wants to get involved and wants to use the ring, and Troy hated that. So, anyways, they eventually had a match. Troy went against Waltman at the PWA, and Eddie wanted Waltman he wanted Troy to put Waltman over, and Troy would not have it. He said, "That's bullshit. I've been here longer. I'm not just going to take a dive for him." So they worked out a DQ on it, I guess. But I wasn't there for that. Troy told me all about it. You were there, I think, right?
Yep, I was in attendance that night.
Yeah, that was in George's and Fridley. Lots of matches there for the PWA.
Kelsey has a perfect chance to pin him. No, pin him.
Yeah, back to the NWF. So Troy was
Kelsey could keep his belt.
he was kind of just a natural. Even I remember the day he joined, he could take bumps like this from day one. He was really good. Troy's another one that didn't complain about finishes. He didn't care if he had to lose or pin. There's all that. It was actually flour, but it looks like salt. Watch it. He throws it right in Kelsey's face. And it was actually flour, though. We ain't going to throw salt in somebody's face.
Flower left of injury.
Flour is bad enough, man. That's not the first time Troy did that little gimmick. I took that quite a few times as well. It was hard to get the flour out of your eyes. So it's a street clothes match. That's why they're dressed in street clothes. Our referee here is the late Rick Pitts. He's another one that passed away. Rick was an interesting guy. I believe he lived in those apartment complexes as well that we were talking about in Coon Rapids there. And that's how he kind of got involved. But he would show up at these events. I remember he showed up at the July card, drunk as a skunk. So drunk that he couldn't even do the refereeing properly. I'm like, Rick, you got to sober up, man. And then after that event, I told him, you're more than welcome to keep doing this, but you cannot show up smashed. And so he was sober tonight. He liked the tip of the bottle, though.
To be honest, with both you and Slick Steenerson, I could have really seen both you guys going places with Matty.
I tell you, the man, you don't know nothing about wrestling. First of all, he is a dumb wrestler. You don't know how.
I'm sorry, Dave. What was that?
Oh, I just said I could have seen you and Troy going places if both would have stuck with it.
Well, yeah, but you remember, I was only 145 pounds, even when I was working with Eddie. And that was pretty light. I'd have to put on more weight, really. And even then, the little guys weren't really making it quite yet. That came around another 5 or 6 years. I know my good friend Charlie Lane, Luxury Lane, he's going to come on as a guest for us next year. He's told me that he said if I was a bigger guy, he thinks I would have went on further. For me, it was size. I just wasn't quite big enough. But Troy, he had the size. He could have. I always said Troy could have went on if he wanted to, but he got hooked up with the woman, and that was the rest of history.
Look, love will do great things to a man.
Yeah. But yeah, this was the big. We knew, and man, the buzz. This for this event leading up to it, when we had those advanced ticket sales, we all knew it was going to be a big night. And then when the night of the event, we're in the dressing room, we're looking out the windows of the Armory there in the dressing room. We seen all the people on the sidewalks, and there's at one point was a line formed before the event even started to get in that was wrapping around the corner.
Well, that's what good promotion will do to you.
Yeah, and that was,
you
was
know,
a real high point for the league here.
You know, I've been to plenty of independent wrestling, and a lot of places don't draw like we do.
Yeah, I mean, You know, and part of it's because, well, here's the other thing. Wrestling in the 80s was huge, huge popularity. So we have that going for us too. The other thing, though, we were unique. You know, you couldn't see kids wrestling anywhere else. So it was the attraction there too.
Yep, you had to come to an NWF show to see kids wrestle.
Yeah. Now see how they're holding Kelsey's legs?
Yep.
Kelsey's legs. And so, you know, so Troy, he wins the belt. He's happy. I'm going in there trying to plead with the referee, saying, hey, he held the ropes. He held the ropes. And this, everything you see happen here was all planned. What's going to happen? Nothing blotched here.
But, you know, the one thing, honestly, Troy, that we messed up on with this was, you know, it was no disqualification, basically no rule.
Right, but outside interference is a different situation.
Well, holding the ropes, though.
Yeah, he's holding the ropes. That's outside interference. So you either, remember, you were either just, you could be disqualified, but you couldn't, you never said anything about having outside interference. Otherwise, you'd have the whole crowd come in and you'd win the match, right? There have to be some sort of rules.
Yep.
So that's where the other ref comes in and says, we're reversing it for due to outside interference. So Kelsey gets the belt back on a reverse decision. They didn't happen a whole lot in those days.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, Troy selling his heel commentating at the booth there.
You know, there you go, and had to kill a good vibe there for.
Troy was so good at selling that stuff. You watch him take his falls. So now we go on to the championship match with myself against Mr. Macho. Now we worked a match, Mike and I, Mike Whaley's Mr. Macho. We worked a match on this TV taping here a month or two before this Armory event. So we're starting to build up this feud. There's that famous blue belt that Dave was talking about. That was such a cool looking belt. And again, we're just showing highlights. This is all from the DVD. Just kind of build up a little bit to the matches. Threw me over the fence. Chain link fence.
Municipal auditorium.
Yeah.
But to break kayfabe, Yoho Municipal Auditorium was the backyard of Crossen.
And the reason we were in the backyard is we just had no other place to set the ring up that was big enough that we could get it into. We couldn't put it in my garage. Remember, I had that insurance agent in '85 said we can't do wrestling on the property anymore. So I literally snuck these tapings in the backyard. My mom didn't even know about this. We just did these tapings because I had to get tapings done for the cable shows and all the syndication. We were going in 22 states at this time, so I had to send tapes out to all these different markets. And I had to have the show keep going.
Not to cut you off, but here's a good picture of the original NWF.
Of that blue belt. Tell you what, Dave, I'm going to go grab that belt. You take over for me for just a second.
All right.
I'll tell you this.
Here we have Mr. Macho trying to hype up for the match.
I've been talking with Mr. X.
We had fun with these shows. We promote it. We build these cards up. And I mean, it's just, you got to remember, people, we were anywhere from 10 to 18 years old. We were building up these cards. It just goes to show kids. You put your mind to something, you can do anything you want. I mean, Crossen back in the day here was, say, 16.
And I'm gonna love to see what happens when this thing comes
Running his own
crashing down your head.
professional wrestling
20 miles
organization?
an hour when I I might even take some holes, drill some holes in there, get some air pressure, so when I swing that thing, it's gonna smack you like a bad habit.
So you see the belt on screen, and this is the replicated, true replication belt today.
A lot better than Crusher, I
So,
know that much.
And
nice looking belt. And it has the NWF property plate now, which is cool. Thanks.
if I'm correct, if they contact one Patrick Crossen on Facebook, they can get the belt for how much is it?
That's good.
Well, the belt maker that made that belt, he's in Pakistan, and it took forever to make it, man. We were going back and forth in communication for almost 2 months. But he gave me a special price on that belt if I want to do a wholesale with him. So you can get the belt as low as $210 if you really want it, for belt collectors that are out there. So you just have to get a hold of me. Otherwise, the belt maker, I gave him the because I own the trademark for National Wrestling Federation, so I gave him the rights to use to replicate the belt going forward. So he'll eventually sell it direct to anybody for $250 plus shipping. And you could save a little bit of money if you really want to get that belt. That's a cool belt for the price, especially, and it's built as a it's a relief plate style build. So if you look at the side, you can see it's raised. Everything's raised. And the hardest thing in this belt is that Russian emblem. We couldn't find it anymore. We had to figure out what that thing said, and I was he figured it out. But all the text was around it and everything, not from old pictures and stuff. So it's pretty cool. I love that belt. That was my favorite version of our title. We had a couple variations.
So just so fans know, if they order that from Patrick Crossen on Facebook, you are getting the quality belt that Crusher Crossen was just holding.
Yeah. It weighs 9 pounds. They call Ric Flair's the 10 pounds of gold. That's the 9 pounds of platinum. That's what I call it. Because we had the platinum look versus the gold look. Macho, let's talk a little bit about this match. He wasn't the easiest to work with in the ring. Very stiff. Out of all the guys I wrestled, he was the stiffest. And I didn't know the terms back then. I always called it. I said he felt rubber, like rubber. That's the word I used back in the day, like a rubber toy figure. You can't move him.
Yep.
And that's kind of how he was. He wasn't the easiest. This isn't my best match. I'm going to be honest. But Mike and I could have done a better match than what we did. There's no doubt about that. But this was kind of what we build up for this whole event: U.S. champion versus world champion. It was a good match, though. I mean, just wasn't one of my best. I think my matches with Steve, in all honesty, Mr. X and Pretty Boy Taylor were probably my best matches, just because Steve was good. What he did outside later on, taking the ring from us and all that kind of stuff, I'll never forgive him. But in the ring, Steve Engstrom was really good. He was.
Between the ropes, he was good, but away from the ropes, he followed his own agenda.
A lot of people say, what was Steve doing involved with you guys? What's this 26-year-old doing with a bunch of kids? Today, it draws a lot of eyebrows. But back then, remember, Michael Jackson and his fondling with kids made parents much more aware of that type of thing. But back then, nobody thought about that. So people today think, what is Steve Engstrom doing with you guys' kids? Is he some kind of pervert? No, he wasn't. He really wasn't. He just loved wrestling but knew he was too small to do it and just wanted to be involved.
Anything he can get his hands on.
And eventually take it over with his older friends.
Push him off. Oh,
That's what he was up to.
he's coming back. Oh, he doesn't quite get the leapfrog, but nevertheless,
But he wasn't no kind of pervert or anything like that. Trust me on that. He
He did a lot of things, but he wasn't a pervert.
yeah, I can't. I'm not gonna. The first person that would like to label him as me, and I'm not gonna come out here and say what he isn't. But leapfrog almost screwed that up. You know, I got that leapfrog from watching Jimmy Snuka. He always did it. That's where I picked that up from. That double leapfrog deal.
Yep.
Yeah. That's how we got. That's how a lot of us got our moves. It was what we watched, right?
Yep. I mean, as kids, we tried to pattern ourselves after our favorite wrestler.
Yep. So back to the AWA. So I had sent tapes to Vern. I was put in touch with this guy by the name of Roy Nelson. And Roy, he was Vern's agent. He always told me to keep him informed. And that's what I did. All these events, I would call Roy up and say, yeah, Roy, we're doing an event at the Anoka Armory. I remember I told him about the first one. And I said, we're calling it Superstar Spectacular 86. And he kind of chuckled. And I said, was there something wrong? And he says, oh, no, this just sounds like something we would do. I said, oh, okay. And I told him about this event and everything. And so the AWA was well aware of what we were doing. And for this event here, like I said, we did our posters up that said All-Star Wrestling. You see them in the preview thing. And Chris Barger, who are announcer and interviewer in all the shows that you've seen interviewing the guys, and he's also one half of the Rock and Roll Express as a wrestler, he reads an article in the paper right prior to this show where Vern went out and sued somebody out in the middle of nowhere in Minnesota for using All-Star Wrestling for their event. Because it's a trademark of the AWA. And so Chris is like, I can't be involved with this. If we get sued or something over using that and it comes back, Chris was convinced that Vern was going to shut us down. Because we were using All-Star Wrestling. Believe me, Vern knew we were doing a lot of things. I was saying brought to you by the AWA on our intro and outro credits. I was giving credit to Roy Nelson in our credits. Roy even asked, I guess you got my name in the credits. I said, yeah. They were well aware of what I was doing. They left us alone. And I'll tell you why I think Vern left us alone and just let us do our own thing. Part of Vern had to appreciate what we were doing. He just did. And just think, we had all this positive newspaper articles and TV. We were on Eyewitness News, positive story on the news. We had the Star Tribune doing Sunday paper articles on us. It was all this positive stories. Vern knew that if he were to come out publicly and go after a bunch of kids doing wrestling like this, it would not look good for his image.
Exactly.
On a kids organization. So Vern kept his distance, and he just kind of let us do our own thing. And you gotta appreciate that.
Oh yeah, I mean, they knew that we were doing stuff that they'd probably go after other people for, but hey,
Getting beer thrown in his face.
essentially we're also giving the AWA free publicity,
Yeah.
free advertising.
I even went as talk about being bold. When we did our last Armory event in August, I actually bought TV advertising for cable. And in those days, you could pick the shows you wanted it to be on. So I said, okay, I want this advertisement, this commercial basically. I want it to be aired on ESPN Championship Wrestling. I want it aired on USA Network Wrestling on Tuesday Night Titans, I think it was then. And I want it on World Championship Wrestling on Saturdays at 5 o'clock. I want it specifically on those shows, and they did that. So talk about direct advertising. We had our advertisements for our Armory card right in their programs. I've never seen any promotion do that since. But talk about, I mean, that's the way to do it.
Yeah, I mean, advertise the wrestling during a wrestling show.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I did back then. The August card's a whole other story. One thing I overlooked was the NWA came to town the very same day we did our Armory event. And everybody that was a true wrestling fan had to go to the NWA show. Crockett's promotion.
It was the first time the NWA had been to the Twin Cities.
Yeah, and so it's like, that was a big deal. And I remember running into, what's his name, Dave? Pro Wrestling Torch.
Oh, now I'm drawing a brain fart on his
I'm
name.
drawing a blank.
Wade Keller.
Wade Keller. So, story about Wade. He had just started his wrestling torch in 1987, and he actually started out wrestling for the Observer. He was, reporting for the Observer for Meltzer. And I remember he came to our NWF events at the Dry Dock. That's where I actually met him. And I remember Jeff introduced me. He said, "Hey, Sean, I want you to introduce you to this guy. His name's Wade Keller. He was my age." And Wade was a fan, and he told me, he says, "Yeah, I've been watching you guys forever on cable, and I wanted to go to that Armory event in August, but the NWA was in town, and I had to go to that." I understood. He was a nice guy, Wade was. I remember when I seen him later on in George's and Fridley when I was working for Sharky, he complimented me on my matches. He gave me a good. Wade did all the reviews for Meltzer back then, and he gave me a good review for Meltzer's Wrestling Observer. I remember that. So nothing against Wade, but since then Wade's kind of gotten a little bit big now, and I remember I wanted him to rate my forward in my book, and he never got back to me on it.
Well, fame does things to people.
Yeah.
Now, just pick your brain a little bit, Sean. I mean, you're, 16 years old during this match?
I was 16, yep.
What's going through your mind while you're in the ring?
Well, when you're in a match like this, the only thing going through my mind is the match itself. For me, I kind of block out the crowd. From what I can remember, I remember being in the ring and doing everything.
Being in the moment.
In the moment, right. And just trying to concentrate on what I'm doing in the ring. I don't really reflect too much on what the fans were doing. I know that Mike got mad at me in this match. I don't know if it happened yet, but there's a point where I throw water in his face. I grab a cup of water or something and I throw it in his face. He was mad. He didn't like that. And I don't know if it happened yet, but you'll see me throw water in his face, and he did not like that. Yeah, Mike and we could have done a better match. We really could. This is the only match I never wore my traditional singlet, black tights look.
Crossen, I'm very sorry. It's not a stomach.
I don't know. I was thinking of maybe going with a different look, but I eventually go back to that wrestling singlet look.
Yep.
See, this is how matches were these days. It's just we call them a rest period, and that's what you do. He's got a full Nelson, and this is just for us to rest. We call them a rest spot.
Rest spot, and talk about what's coming up next.
Yeah, I think I already threw the water in him.
Yeah, 1 minute remaining.
Yeah, there's only 1 minute.
Now, to be honest, my personal opinion, it wouldn't have been such a bad thing to have water thrown in your face during a match.
Is getting beat up, and I am loving every minute of it.
Yeah, this is basically our finish here is a double count out, so that's what's happening. That's why we're doing all this stuff outside the ring. And
if you notice, it wasn't Crossen running away from the ring.
yeah, so dark. I wish we would have been smart to at least leave half the house lights on, so it would be a little bit more illuminated for the
Yep.
video.
Getting beat up.
That's my only complaint with this.
Crossen thinks it's hot sauce.
And now Crusher speaks.
Yeah, we had a little bit of heat there. This is real right now.
None of this is scripted at the moment.
Yeah, I remember that. Those were real elbows. He pissed me off, and I just remember that. This whole thing wasn't planned to have happened there. Yeah, sometimes that stuff happens. It wasn't the worst match, but I just think I've done better than that than this one. Now we're going on to the
World Tag Team title match.
Yep. Vandar and Conan, the Barbarians. What a devastating team they were.
Well, they were our version of the Road Warriors.
Yeah, they were. And Tim didn't like the image, though. He wanted to get out of that Road Warrior image after a while. That's why he changed his name and stuff. But now this is Brian Peterson. He had been on the show forever in '85, and making his return on this one. And he was supposed to be in the earlier match, but we had to bring him in to fill in Chris Barger's spot because Chris didn't want to wrestle tonight, remember?
Yep.
Because of the whole afraid we're going to get sued and he didn't want to have his name dragged into it. So Peterson took Chris's spot for this match. And yeah, these guys could all work pretty well. Peterson's the only one that's a little rusty here because he hadn't been in it. Peterson was part of the '85 NWF where we were still learning and everything. We weren't perfected. Where the guys, like all three of these guys, Jerry, Tim, and Mike, were well advanced in their wrestling technique compared to Brian Peterson. And you'll see that when you watch this match. You know, I've been in the ring with both of these guys, the Barbarians. I've had singles matches with them. Tim was rough, man. He was rough. Jerry a little bit easier to work with, but Tim could be rough. We had some matches. Our singles match we had was a heck of a match, but it was we were both weren't selling for each other, so it had a really it was entertaining for the fans to watch, but it was kind of semi-real, you could say.
Well, I mean, being honest, you know, I've known Tim for many, many years. And at that point in time, both of you could be known to be stubborn. And both of you could be known to want your ego to be stroked a little bit.
And that's exactly what our match was when we had our match. We'll have to do that watch along. Maybe we can get Tim to come on for that one. Would be a great conversation. This was a good match, though. Honestly, when you watch the match, it was good. It was just we weren't selling for each other very well. Is the only thing. But yeah, back to this guy. So Brian Peterson in the white. You know, he just is not quite as polished as Tim and Jerry and Mike at this point in time. By this time, the Tim and Jerry Davis, sorry to cut you off, but by this time they had tag team technique down pretty good. Notice the quick tags.
Yep, quick tags.
Yeah.
You know, at that point in time, they were real close with each other.
Mm-hmm.
Is a total cheater. No, me, I wouldn't even think of cheating. I know you
And
wouldn't,
interesting fact,
Captain Crunch?
the Barbarians were cousins.
Yeah, Jerry and
And
Tim Holland got cousins.
And Bulldog, our commentator, was also cousins with Tim and Jerry.
Yep, they were all three related. That's the way they got into the league. Bulldog Butcher, the one commentating, he was the first to come in back in 1985. He's Russian. He had chain, and it was a great gimmick. He had for the summer, he did like a butch cut, so he had a shaved head, looked like a Russian. So we're like, you're going to be a Russian. You had the look. And the next show, Tim came on because Troy told him, Troy basically Troy Otto got him to come in, and he came on as Standard, singles wrestler at the time. Very quiet in those days, very timid, and then they kind of took. Then you didn't see him for the rest of the year, and then they all made their return again in early '86, and were with it ever since.
Mix him up. Throws him into the corner. Take off.
Mike Bauer is really good. Wrestling wise, he the guy in the ring with Thandar, he was pretty good. Mike spent a lot of time watching tape. And that's what we called it back then. We'd watch the shows, we'd record them, and we'd watch tape.
Yep.
To kind of understand what you wanted, to do the moves and learn it. And that's kind of how, we didn't have formal training like you said.
They're chanting rock and roll. The fans are chanting rock and roll right now.
And to be honest, Thandar was another one that was in the old neighborhood that I was in.
Yeah.
With Terry and Chad and Todd and Troy.
Yeah, lots of good. We were just the NWF was fortunate to get so many talented kids to come in and do this. Now, Mike, he's 18 years old in this point in time.
And Tim is probably 17, I think.
Well, I don't know. I don't think he was older than me.
You guys.
If I want to say, is a year younger. He might have been 15, maybe 16. So this match, the reason we have the finish in this match the way it was, and I'm gonna save that story for the end so I don't give it away. We'll let it play out. Again, we're watching. I should have put this on earlier. NWF Wrestling, the Fall Brawl from the Anoka Armory on October 18th, 1986 is our watch along today. Little interesting fun fact. This is the program guide. Notice it says Fall Super Spectacular Card. That was the original name of this event. The Fall Brawl, the reason it was called that, it was renamed for the DVD release to the Fall Brawl.
And if you want the official DVD, please contact Crossen Draw.
Yeah. I know some of the fans here tonight have the DVDs. I've been reading some of the comments. So they've seen it before, but also while I'm at it, I want to also make sure everybody knows about
Great job on the promoters of the NWF.
Thundar can't beat up on
at least I thought I had one for that.
He's nothing but a traitor.
Oh yeah, here it is.
He's turned on
Visit us on the web at nwfwrestling.org. nwfwrestling.org is our official website. So anything NWF, you want to go there. We have links there to all the DVDs, and the book, and these new T-shirts that we're wearing. I've got the cool outline T-shirt. This is the newest design. I love the way this one turned out. Dave's got the distress logo look. These are cool shirts. I'm doing these completely at cost, you guys. They're $13 a shirt, I think. It's the cost. I'm not looking to make money on these. I just think they look cool, and I want anybody who wants to get a shirt just to get the shirt because I just think they look cool. I don't care about making money on T-shirts.
And, I mean, we're not doing these watch-alongs to make money. Yes, I'm promoting merch. But it's just, if you're a fan, you want merchandise, and I want to let you know it's available.
And if you want to get any of this merchandise, go to nwfwrestling.org/products, or just pick the products tab on the website, and that'll show you links to all that stuff.
You'll have your world title on that.
Yeah, eventually. I want Belt Patch Shop, the ones who made the belt, to get me a proper link so I can put it on there from them. Going forward. I'm planning on getting all the NWF belts replicated, not just the world title. I'm working on the national title as we speak, and we have national tag title belts coming up. We have the lightweight tag team title belts coming up, all in replication very soon. I believe that is the finish.
Yep.
And they win the World Tag Team titles, the Rock and Roll Express. It was planned. The reason we broke up the Barbarians, because Jerry was about to enlist in the service, and he was going to go away. So we needed to get the titles off of these guys. So, interesting here, if you watch here, you see how they're having Tim and Jerry have a little confrontation in the ring. And we didn't get to see it. What happened is they turn on each other. And we were building up Thandar versus Conan, we were hoping to get that in before Jerry left.
That's my one complaint about that DVD, that I wish you would have let that play out a little longer.
Yeah. Now we go to the main event. Luscious Larry. We don't even get to see his entrance. A lot of this stuff is cut out because of time constraints for the DVD. You can only get so much to fit on the DVD. So I wish we could have seen his grand entrance. But he came out the doors, like we opened the doors of the armory. And he comes out with a special light, and you can see all this fog and see this image coming out of such a cool entrance. And that was all planned. We wanted to have this grand entrance for Larry because this was our main attraction. He's like we built him as like a professional wrestler, Luscious Larry, to take on the NWF's very own Pretty Boy Taylor. That was how we built him.
This was supposed to be Pretty Boy Taylor defending the honor of the NWF.
But Larry, and this is how I promoted Larry. I just used what I learned watching the AWA and how they treated Andre the Giant. He was our Andre the Giant, in my opinion. So I just booked him as such. And what happened is over the next few months, this all goes to Larry's head. And Larry thinks he's a big draw and he's a big star. So he wants to start doing everything his way. stops listening to me. And that's the mistake Larry made, because we all know what happened with Luscious Larry in the end when he tried to do his own league.
Beautiful Bobby Ferrari from Sicily, Italy.
2 cheap shots. My pretty boy.
You know, as has been noted before, you know, Larry and Steve tried to go off and create their own organization, and it flopped, so to speak.
Oh, it didn't just flop. It fell flat on its face. But here's why. You got 2 guys, Larry and Steve, good in the ring, but not any intelligence in how to run anything. Here's the other thing with Steve. People say to me, I've heard this too, Dave, well, you had Steve Engstrom, who was 26-year-old. He must have been running the NWF. Believe me when I tell you this. Steve didn't run anything. He wasn't smart enough to. Steve was not a leader. I'm not trying to rip on the guy, but he just wasn't. Steve did what I told Steve to do, is what he did.
Yep.
Anything he did was at my direction. Trust me when I tell you this. And Steve was a great worker bee. He was good. He was a good follower that way. He was excellent, made beautiful title belts at the time. He was very handy with the ring and craftsmanship and all that kind of stuff. But Steve did what I told him to do, really. He wasn't running anything. He wasn't making any decisions. Trust me on that.
You know, this league was run by kids, promoted by kids. All the television taping was done by kids.
Yeah, it was. It really was. As hard as that is to believe.
What's he doing? Oh no. But somehow Pretty Boy Taylor manages to stay clear of Luscious Larry.
You know,
How he does it, I do not know. And
all
Luscious
that was
Larry
done by the
consulting
kids,
with his manager,
not the
Billy
adult.
Bobby Ferrari.
And we really were. We were leading this. We were in charge to this. I mean, it was our thing.
They lock up.
So a lot of pride, you know. And people that still doubt it, don't you? And here's the thing I have to say about that, Dave. If there's people out there that still refuse to believe, don't you think one of these 100 or so kids would have come out and said, "Hey, he's full of crap. His dad was there running it," or whatever, right? If that was the case, I just think that would have happened. Of course it would have. So, no, it's the way it was. It was just a different time, a different era.
Back when we were kids, our parents, you know, we'd leave the house early in the morning and not come back until sunset.
Yeah.
And it wasn't that our parents didn't care, it was just our parents trusted us.
Yep.
You see him there. Taylor is mad at.
This is the final match on the Fall Brawl from the Anoka Armory in 1986. This is the main event.
What is it, ladies and gentlemen?
Luscious Larry against Pretty Boy Taylor. Again, I really wish we had better lighting for these videos. I wish we had better. I shouldn't say lighting. The lighting was good. I wish we had better cameras that didn't require so much light. By the way, all these, this looks like a multi-camera shot. These are all 3 separate cameras, independently filming, recording. And this is basically a hard edit in post-production. That's how this was done. A lot of work to do that. It's not like having a mobile van unit with a live shot, which we did later on. Our August card was done like that. But in the early days, it was just multiple independent cameras filming everything, and then we had to edit it together later. That was a process. It took several times in the editing suite to do that for this one show.
And I'm glad that was your headache, not mine.
Yeah, I mean, it was. And primitive technology back then. I mean, everything was. Now, today, it's all digital. It wouldn't be so hard. But back then, yeah, you had to queue up 2 different tape decks, layer one down, then go layer the second one down. It was a process. You know, with that technology. You know, people ask, Dave, think there'll ever be another NWF, another league of kids running it, doing their own thing and being like successful to the point where they at least hold events like this. Think it'll ever happen again?
In my opinion, I don't see it.
Totally exhausted.
At least not now in this era, unless things change.
Right.
I mean, just from a liability standpoint, I think.
Exactly. I mean, back when we were doing this, it was all an agreement between us kids that would happen in the ring, stayed in the ring.
Yeah. Notice that big hair spot on the back of Steve's back? Jason used to comment on that all the time. I remember Jason one time said, "Look at that hair spot in the back of Pretty Boy Taylor. Looks like somebody spilled a bottle of hair growth or hair tonic or something." Make all sorts of jokes. But what that was, it was a birthmark that Steve had, and it just happened. It was just one of the effects of a birthmark. So I asked him, what is that?
Well, I mean, as many times you guys faced each other, you had the right to know.
Yeah.
Leg drop to Pretty Boy Taylor. Pretty Boy Taylor stunned at this point.
That's just Larry.
There you see Pretty Boy Taylor on the floor. What's Larry gonna do? No, Larry wants out. Taylor's struggling. Taylor is struggling to get up.
I'm actually looking forward to once you finally make a comeback here to the Twin Cities area.
Yeah.
It'll be nice. You know, I got the perfect idea for a place for a bunch of us all to get together.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and I think you know the place to do it, and it's not in Anoka.
I don't know if I know the place you think.
Oh, you know the place. You're the one that told me about it.
I told you about it?
Yep.
But it's not in Anoka.
Right.
I don't know. Tell me.
I'm thinking Maplewood.
Oh, the Maplewood Mall. Yeah, of course. Where the Ice Dragon and his pizza place exist. Pizza the Slice, I think it's called. Really good pizza if you're in Minnesota. Twin Cities. I mean, what you get there for what you get, like if you want to go for lunch or something, I can't. Man, I know I'm giving a shameless plug, but he makes a hell of a good pizza.
You know, I will say back in the day, Ice Dragon was a handful to deal with.
Yeah.
Nowadays, great guy, fun to talk to.
Yeah.
So if you're in Maplewood, at the Maplewood Mall,
In the food court. Yep.
you go to the food court there, go to the pizza joint right there in the food court, get yourself some good pizza.
Stamp to the arm. Pretty.
Long match here with Steve and Larry.
Pretty Boy Taylor's face raw at this moment.
And
Taylor.
Steve was pretty good though. He really was. You could put Steve in the ring with the worst wrestler there is, and he's going to make him look like $1 million.
Very true.
Larry, you know, he was still very green here. This was his first match. Well, actually his second match. He did come in one of our TV tapings in '85, Larry did. Steve had plans for Luscious Larry way early on. So he did a match against Steve in the garage. Larry barely fit in the ring. I mean, the garage ceiling was so low. Yeah, these Armory events, the way they worked is so we had to rent the facility. The cost to rent the Anoka Armory in those days was, I remember the down payment was $200, and then we owed the balance. So I think it was $400 a show, and that was for a half a day rental. So we get to come in at either 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon to set everything up. And that's how we did it. We'd have the Armory for a half a day.
And I mean, us kids would go in, we'd set the ring up, set all the chairs up, and then we'd go back to the dressing room and get ready for our match.
Yeah. And my big thing back then, because the kids always wanted to go out and take a peek and look out the door, and I was always, get away from that door, get away from it. Do not show yourself out there until you go out for your match. I was real big on that. I didn't want anybody to see us before we went out. I mean, we had a TV monitor in there anyway, so you could see what was going on for the one camera anyway.
There's Pretty Boy Taylor losing his footing on the top rope there.
Yeah. We're getting very close to the finish in this match.
You know, I hate to say it, as in shape as Larry is, he looks like he's about gas.
Yeah. Yeah, he blew up.
Pretty Boy Taylor down.
You know, I do understand why Pretty Boy Taylor's gassed in this match. I mean, this is his third match of the night.
Steve isn't. Steve and I, in the July card, we did a 45-minute draw. Steve could go the distance. Larry, yeah, you're right. He's puffing and puffing here.
Oh no, what's he doing, ladies and gentlemen?
Pretty Boy Taylor's trying to give him a chance to try and catch a breath here.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of naysayers wrestling don't believe how athletically able you have to be to do this stuff.
You know, a lot of people too, Dave, look at this and say, "What do you know? Your kid's wrestling. Why do you have an adult match like this?" And you know, Jason Crossen said it best in the documentary for his interview, anyway. That this was kind of the direction we were maybe thinking of starting to transition to at the time.
Right.
And so I know a lot of guys from the show say it was a mistake. We should have never did this. Should have just kept it the kids. But we were thinking maybe we need to transition to be more of a legitimate regular league. And maybe start shifting in that direction.
Well, I mean, you were getting older. I mean,
Oh, ladies and gentlemen, I just can't. This is a remarkable match.
you know, we had to
You see there, Larry?
lay groundwork for you as an adult to be able to be involved if it would have gone that far.
But I'll tell you something. We made a huge mistake. Larry, when he tried to start to work to merge with his NCWA league, we'll talk about that in another podcast, but one of the things he wanted to do is he wanted to shift to more of this, and he wanted to get rid of all the lightweight wrestlers, so guys like the Super D's and Rough Ryan, staples in our show, all got kind of axed out of it. And I went along with it, but man, that was a mistake because they were our future. Those guys were going to be the next heavyweight wrestlers. So,
Well,
should never have it.
You say that Larry and Steve couldn't see beyond the nose on their face, you know.
Yeah, Steve and Larry basically they just wanted this. They wanted to create more of this. They wanted to get Larry wanted to get his other weightlifting buddies involved, and they wanted to create a league more of this. And you know, the thing is, the attraction was it was kids doing wrestling, and
Yeah,
they didn't want to see a bunch of guys that couldn't make it in the real leagues, right?
you know, that's what made us unique. We were kids doing this.
Oh, kick to the gut.
Yeah.
You know, all you had to do
A kick to the face.
if you wanted to watch, you know, grown men wrestle, turn on Channel 9.
Right. Go watch the AWA, the WWF, the
Yep.
major leagues. But you know, this particular match worked just because
Remarkable, ladies and gentlemen.
we brought Larry in to take care of this guy who didn't belong on our show was kind of the way we booked it. And this was the finish. His knee covering Larry, and Steve gets the win. That was the kind of the plan. There was more that followed it, obviously, from there. We just didn't have, the DVD can only get so much on it, and that's the problem. And I have to, there's ending credits and stuff. I had to cut it out because of the copyright. I have licensing on all that stuff for the DVD release. It does not cover stuff like this. So I had to take the intro and the outro off just because that's the way it works.
But if you want to see the intro and outro, you can always buy the DVDs from the website.
DVD. Yeah, that's where it's licensed for. And so that was the Fall Brawl at the Anoka Armory on October 18th, 1986. It was our largest event at the Armory. It was sold out. There was there was some standing only is what we had in there. And big event. And it went over real well. And all the matches were pretty good, really, honestly. Weren't bad.
I agree. One thing I do want to plug to people, and this is where you'll have to step in more, Sean. If you're not the DVD type of person, you like to stream, Sean, isn't there a way that they can watch it online?
Yeah, there is. If you go to nwfwrestling.org/NWF-video-network, or just go to nwfwrestling.org and then pick that link. There's a bunch of tabs at the top, and you'll see the NWF Video Network. Powered by Pivot Share, that's where you can go and, there's a subscription service, or you can just watch a single episode. But you can watch everything intact the way it was actually done, all the music and everything. But that's on our video network at nwfwrestling.org, and it's way if you want to see all that stuff. This was our test show, our pilot. We're going to go in January. We're going to start up again every Thursday at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 Pacific. And starting January 5th, we're going to start picking an episode where we're going to do a watch along like this, start to finish. A lot of our TV tapings.
Possibly have a guest on the show.
Yeah, having some of our old NWF guys come on with us. Hopefully a show they're on. Maybe we'll watch their debut when they came into the league.
Please don't show mine.
Those TV tapings were fun. A different vibe. We were always kind of playing, we were having fun with it a lot of times. But they were fun. That's what made people tune into it, because they were fun to watch. They really were.
They were fun to watch and fun to do. I mean, aside from Terry getting hurt from our botch,
Terry
only one other injury that I remember happening, but we never had any major injuries in the NWF.
No, what's that?
We all took care of each other in that ring.
Well, it wasn't about hurting one another. That's why when people compare us to, like, you're just a glorified backyard wrestling league, I've heard that. I don't look at it that way at all, because backyard wrestling, to me, is like uncontrolled sensationalism of people trying to hurt one another back in the 90s, right? With bulbs, thumbtacks, whatever, flying off the roof, doing all sorts of crazy stunts. We weren't doing any of that with what we did.
We were just trying to mimic what AWA, WWF,
and what the major leagues were doing.
Yeah.
And Dave, the terminology backyard wrestling didn't exist in the 80s, so we were never labeled that way then, because it never existed then, really. So,
I mean, we've actually gained interest from potentially, let's be honest, the Minnesota Wrestling Hall of Fame has been in contact with you and me.
Yeah, Hero Castle, I always stay in touch with them. I think it's a great organization, what they're doing. Minnesota needs a Hall of Fame for wrestling, so it's, anything we can do to support that, I'm all in. So we got things planned, hopefully in the future, that we can do with them, and and looking forward to that. I'm not even sure, Dave, when we go January 5th, what show we're going to do. I'd like to say we're going to do whatever show, but I'm not sure yet. We'll have to figure that out. But hopefully we'll have a teaser for you when we get ready to do that show prior. So,
I hope you fans have enjoyed your time with us. Our future events probably won't be as long.
No, this was a long one tonight. Normally they're going to only go normally these TV tapings were an hour. So normally when we go live, next year, it'll be like an hour long as we do the watch along. This Armory event was a long one.
Well, it was our best show.
Yeah.
Best Armory event.
The other Armory card, there's one other one. So if you have the DVDs, there's 4 of them. But there's a 5th Armory card that's not on DVD. It was in March. It's called Night of Wrestling. It was about the same type of attendance that the May 9th card had, about 300, a little over 300 fans. And it was a great night of wrestling. And it doesn't exist because a certain somebody recorded over it, and we're going to leave him nameless, but he was mad because he wasn't on it. And he recorded over it, and so we don't have it anymore. It was a great night.
I hate to say it, but, he was pretty petty about it.
Yeah, I guess you could say. I guess that's a hint enough, right? But so it's fun. Dave and I are really looking forward to doing this every week and kind of going back in time and seeing this stuff again. And hopefully we'll take questions from you guys going forward. When we get people come in and they have questions about, there's so many questions out there that I've gotten over the years in emails. And we look forward to addressing some of that. Remember, you can always contact us too on Facebook or YouTube. Just send us a message. We can always respond that way too when we do our podcast every week.
Yep. Just hop on Facebook, message either Patrick Crossen or David Floyd Dixon.
Yep.
We do respond to messages, just mentioning it, NWF. And we'll get back to you.
And also, I was going to say, but you reminded me, and another way that we can do this as well is just by you can email nwfwrestling@gmail.com. That's our official email address for NWF. So if you ever want to send us a comment or suggestion or anything like that, that email is how you can contact us as well. And and I was going to say one more time, Dave, I just want to remind everybody, visit us on the web at nwfwrestling.org. That's where you can go to get all the products, all the T-shirts like we're wearing, or the videos or the video links. And then don't forget about, of course, our YouTube channel, which is NWF Wrestling, very easy. And then there's also our Facebook group. We really invite everybody to join our Facebook group. It's open to everybody, and it's very easy to find, facebook.com/groups/NWF Wrestling, and you'll go right to it. We really encourage you to join the Facebook group. That's where you're going to get. Facebook is probably where we send all our information first, right, Dave?
Hey, Facebook's first.
Yeah, so lots of things on there. And a lot of the wrestlers are on there, too. A lot of the guys are on the show. So, all right. I think we've pretty much covered it tonight.
All right. So, to wrap things up, we thank you for joining us. We hope you had fun. Hope you enjoyed the event. Thank you. Have a good night.
And we'll see you January 5th for our next live podcast, going every week from that point on.
Have a good night, folks.
Have a good night.